Hello. In this lecture, the one-way ANOVA, I try to clarify this concept. And to know the analysis of variance is called the ANOVA. And, and the main goal of the ANOVA is to compare the means, okay, is to compare the means of at least three conditions in a particular experiment. Okay, at least there should be three conditions. And with an example, I try to clarify how to compute the ANOVA, one-way ANOVA. And there are 5 steps, you know. I am writing these steps there. Look, there are the first step. The first step is the step 1, you can say. The step 1, in this step, you have to select the hypothesis. Okay, hypothesis. And in the step 2, degrees of freedom, you have to calculate the degrees of freedom. Degrees of freedom. Okay. In the third step, there is a calculation of mean. There is a calculation of mean, and you can say the grand mean, and sum of squares, sum of square within, and sum of square between, and sum of square total. Okay, this type of calculations are there in step 3. So in brief, sum of square total, sum of square within, and sum of square between, you have to calculate here. Now in step 4, you should calculate the mean square between and mean square within. That is the variance between and variance within. Okay, variance between and variance within. Okay, and the final step, step 5, the F statistics. You have to calculate the F statistics. Okay, so there are these 5 steps you have to follow if you like to calculate ANOVA, one-way ANOVA. Okay, so now with an example we will try to clarify this. Look, suppose there is a group 1, group A. Suppose group A, this is group B, group B. Now this is group C. And there may be other groups, but for simplification, I have taken 3 groups. Okay, 3 groups, and the data are suppose 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, and here 8, and again 2, 5, 3, 1, and 9. So 10 the number here, if you count these numbers, then there is 10 numbers. Okay, in group A. In the same way, now I am writing 3, 3, 5, 6, 9, 2, 1, 1, 6, 7. Okay, in this group, these are the numbers. And in group C, there are 8, 8, 9, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 1. So these are the numbers. These are the groups. Okay. And the first step, what is the first step? Hypothesis. Okay. So the hypothesis here is that the mean of this group, that is mu1, and mean of this group mu2, and mean of this group, that is mean mu3. The null hypothesis is mu1 equal to mu2 equal to mu3. And you know the alternative hypothesis, there is difference. Okay, at least there is one difference in mean. So this is the null hypothesis. And now also here you have to select the rejection. Okay, for example, like that, if I draw the F distribution, then if I draw the F distribution, then we can find very clearly. Look, okay, so this is the distribution, and there is a rejection region. Suppose this is the rejection region, and look here, alpha is 0.05. That is 5% level of significance. So rejection region is 5%. And what is the critical value? What is the critical value? The F statistic, the table value, we should find it by calculating our next steps, the degrees of freedom. Okay, degrees of freedom. And here, suppose we are considering the 5%. Okay, we are considering the 5% level. Okay, so now if our calculated F value is in this region, then we reject the null hypothesis or no. And if our calculated F value is less than our table value, then we accept the null hypothesis. Okay, so now the degrees of freedom. Now about the degrees of freedom. So here we should write here for a better understanding. I am writing here. Suppose degrees of freedom within. Okay, within degrees of freedom within, and degrees of freedom between the group within the sample, and degrees of freedom total. Degrees of freedom total. So look here, degrees of freedom between, it is number of conditions, the number of groups here, 3, 1, 2, 3. So K is 3 here, and degrees of freedom is -1. Okay, so 3 minus 1 equal to 2. So degrees of freedom between is 2, and within, now within degrees of freedom. So degrees of freedom, how many actually total samples are here? There is 10, 10, 10. So 30. So n minus k equal to 30 minus 3. Okay, 30 minus 3 equal to 27. So degrees of freedom within, within is 27. So now the total degrees of freedom is 27 plus 2 equal to 29. Clear? So this is the degrees of freedom. Now look very carefully, and now we have to find the table value by using which we can compare our calculated F value. So our table value can be found by using the degrees of freedom between and degrees of freedom within. Okay, here degrees of freedom, is degrees of freedom between is 2 and within is 27. So now go to the F distribution chart. It is a 5% level significance, and 27. Look at this. Actually, here one thing I like to mention here is that we consider degrees of freedom between the top line. Here the degrees of freedom for the numerator, and here we consider the degrees of freedom between. Okay, and here the degrees of freedom denominator. So here we consider degrees of freedom within. So degrees of freedom within is 27, and degrees of freedom between is 2. Okay, so look, degrees of freedom between 2 and 27, it is 3.35. Okay, look at this, 3.35. Now I am writing here if critical value equal to 3.35. Okay, 3.35. This is the critical value. We have to consider this for comparing. Okay, for comparing. Okay, now we have to find out the next step. We will consider the next step. What is the next step? Next step is, here we have found out the degrees of freedom. Now mean, grand mean, and sum square, total sum square within and sum square between. We have to calculate in step 3. Now steps 3. So we have to find out the mean. This group equal to, average is the mean. So mean of this group. Okay, this is the mean. Now this average is also called the mean, you know. So now the group B, for group B, this is the mean. Okay, now for group C, average. Okay. So these are the mean. These are the mean of corresponding groups. Group A, for group A, mean is 4.7. For group B, mean is 4.3. And for group C, mean is 6. Next, we have to find out the grand mean. Okay, we have to find out the grand mean. How it can be calculated? How it can be calculated? The grand mean. Now the formula for calculating the grand mean is, I am writing here. Formula for grand mean is grand mean equal to grand total divided by total number of observations. Okay. So what is the grand total? Grand total means grand total is equal to the sum of this column, and this column. Okay. So sum these column, and so in this way you can do, or other, if I can write it very, I can sum it. Okay, just I am writing the numbers here. Test. This is for group A, and this is for group B, and this is for group C. Okay. So look. Now the grand total, it means equal to sum of these numbers. Okay, with the grand total. Okay, so how many observations are there? 30. So the grand mean is 3 by n. So 150. It is divided by 30. Okay, so equal to and 8. So 5. So grand mean is 5. Clear? So in this way, we have the grand mean. We have the grand mean. Okay. We have the grand mean, and these are the means. Okay. Now I am deleting this group. Just it will be required. Now we have to find out in the look in the step 3. There is we have find out the means of each group and grand mean. Now we are going to find out the sum of square within. At first the sum of square within, and then or at you can calculate the sum of square total. Okay. Sum of square total, how it can be find out sum of square total? At first we have to subtract the mean, the grand mean, from each of these observations, equal to this minus 5. This is the grand mean. Okay. So in this way, if I drag it, then I can calculate very easily. Or you can do it manually in your exercise book. Now this is the difference between the mean. Now we have to make a square of it. Okay, square. This multiply again with this number. Then this is the square. Okay. Now we have to take the sum of this number. Okay. Sum, calculate it and sum it. Okay. So we can back it. So 216 is the, what is the 216? The 216 is the sum of square total. So sum of square total. Now what actually we have done here, the at first we get the difference between the values of x and the mean from difference between the values and the grant mean, and then we take the square, and then we take the sum of all those values, then 1216. Okay, this is the this is the this is the what is this? This is the sum of square total, and we can write it here in this way for a better understanding. Just a moment. I am opening the workspace. Okay, so sum of square total. So look, insert, and here the equation. Okay, so now here summation summation summation, and what is the formula? Here you should write within the bracket. Look, bracket. Here we should write x minus grant mean. Okay, grant mean, and we take the square of this. We take the square of this. This is the actually formula we have followed for finding out the sum of square total. Okay, so we get the sum of square total, that is SST. Okay, this is the sum of square total, marking it this way. So this is the sum of square total. Now sum of square within. Okay, now sum of square within, we have to calculate it, and how it can be calculated, just so look at it very carefully. So here is the group. Okay, now we are going to find out the sum of square within. So I am copying it again, copy, and I paste it. Okay, so now in this step I subtract the mean. What is the mean? This is the mean, 4.7. So 4.7. So we are actually going to subtract the mean of this group from each value of these groups. Okay, so this is the difference, and this way this is one. Now I am keeping it here in the same way for group 2, for group B. Okay, so this minus, the formula is the same. Here the mean is 4.3, so 4.3. Okay, now equal to 8, and mean of this group is 6, so 6. Okay, actually we are following this formula, the same formula, but here you can write in this way, copy and paste, and here is the mean of the group. mean of the group. If group 1, so group 1, and if group 2, so group 2, in this way. Okay, so now we have to take the square of these values equal to this. If we multiply it again, then we get the square. So in this way, now for this value equal to this multiplication sign again this value. So this is the square. Okay, now again this multiplication sign in the square, it becomes square. Okay, so now this is the square. Okay, so now we have to take the sum of this. You have to take the sum of these. Okay, so 68.1, and here the sum of this group is this one 66.1, and again the sum of this one. Okay, so these are the sum. So if we make the total of these equal to this plus this plus this, then this value is nothing but the sum of square within. Okay, sum of square within. So we have sum of square within. Clear? The sum of square total and sum of square within. Now the sum of square between can be found very easily by subtracting the sum of square within from the sum of square total. So sum of square between can be found by subtracting sum of square within from this. So this minus this. Clear? So 15.8 is the sum of square between. Clear? Sum of square between. So now if you go to here, so mean, grand mean, sum of square total, sum of square within, and sum of square between. We have calculated all these terms. Clear? In the step 3. Now in step 4, the variance between and variance within, we have to calculate it. And variance between and variance within. So here the degrees of freedom is considered. Now look. Here the degrees of freedom, actually we have to find out the sum of square. The variance between is nothing but the mean square between. Okay, variance between is nothing but the mean square between, and this can be calculated by variance between. So mean square between and mean square variance between is nothing but the mean square between, and it can be calculated by sum of square between divided by the degrees of freedom. Degrees of freedom of what? Degrees of freedom between. Degrees of freedom between. So 2. Okay. So degrees of freedom between. Now the variance within. Now variance within. Within what does it mean? The mean square within. Variance within is also called the mean square, and mean square within means how it can be calculated. We should divide the sum of square within by degrees of freedom within 27. Clear? Degrees of freedom within 27. Okay. So 7.414815. So now these are the very important. I am highlighting it, okay, for a better understanding. I'm highlighting it. Okay. Now we are going to find out the F statistic. The look at this. Look at the step here. The final step. So we have calculated the variance between and variance within. Clear? Now F statistic. How it can be calculated? F statistic is nothing but F statistic. F statistics is nothing but sum of square, just variance, we have to calculate it by just dividing the variance between by the variance within. Okay, it is a ratio. F statistics is a ratio of variance between on mean square within and mean square within. It is a ratio. Okay, or you can divide the variance between by the variance within. So 7.9 divided by this. So this is the F statistic. Okay, this is the F statistic. Now this is the F statistic. Clear? So now you have to compute. So the table value is this. Copy it. Table value is the critical value. So keep it here. Okay. So keep it here. Now I can highlight it in this way. Okay. So F statistics is 1 point calculated. F statistics 1.065435. And if critical value, that is the table value, is 3.35. So naturally it is clear that it is less than this. Less than this. 1.06 is less than 3.35. So if we go to the curve, we do not get into this region. Okay. We do not get into this region. And so we should accept the null hypothesis. We should not reject the null hypothesis. We should accept the null hypothesis. What is the null hypothesis? The null hypothesis is that the mean of this group, that is mean of this group is 4.3 or mu1, mu2, and mu3. They are same. They are same. So mean of these groups are same. There is no significant difference. Okay, significant difference. So this is the understanding of one-way ANOVA. So I hope you have an understanding over this one-way ANOVA and you clear your concept. And thank you for enjoying this lecture. Thank you.